Hi class, this is Professor Kim Nelson with the Jewelry Design Department at the Fashion Institute of Technology, continuing our tutorial series on drawing 2D curve work in Rhino. Continuing on with our tracing where I left off yesterday. I'm going to draw this branched, actually I'm going to draw the first half of this branched piece right here. Start by creating my box. Through point. I want just the arc, the curved part for now. These are all offset through point curves, like so. Use my fillet curve command to trim that up. Make sure radius is set to 0, which it is. Click on what you want to keep. Okay, so I set up. The only other real important couple of curves here would be pick my offset curve for my drop-down menu. Would be the bottom of this element here. Hi, how you doing? And another reference curve here. Clean that up. And that really gives me all the information I need to start drawing this. The first thing I want to be able to capture is this curving arc right here. And the way I'm going to do that, with an arc command, tangent to curves. So curve menu, arc, tangent to curves. Asks for a first tangent curve. That means touching, coming off of. I'm going to pick that one. I'm going to pick my second tangent curve, which is this one. And now I can rubber band this. And it will remain tangent to those two curves, unless I leave completely. But if as long as it can mathematically stay tangent, it will. And now it gives me a choice. Do I want it to draw the curve on that side? And you'll see as I spin this around, it gives me different curve segments I can keep. I want that one. Okay. I'm going to do an extend by arc to point command. Click on the end. I'm going to draw that up into there. I'm going to repeat that command for this end of the curve. Drag it as far as it's valid. Drag again. And drag again. I want to drag beyond the box. Remember, we always want things to overlap. When you're done, hit enter. Okay. And now I need to create this little reverse curve that I have here. And I'm going to do that with just an interpolate curve. Freeform, interpolate. I'll start somewhere beyond the box here. And I'm just going to let it overlap. That's fine. I'm going to rebuild this. Fourth degree, and I'm going to say that's going to be about an 18-point curve. It's already pretty smooth. I'm pretty close to what I want, so I'm just going to check the analysis on it. Pretty nice. Turn on the control points. I can smooth it out a little bit right here. Remember, I can select more than one point at a time. So if I wanted to, I could grab both of these and move them together. And that's fine. I'm going to move this over a little bit. All of these. Just so I come closer to my initial impression of where that motif ended. Yeah, bring these back over. Fine. Okay, now I have the issue of what's going on here. And the way I'm going to handle that is with another arc tangent to curves. Pick first tangent curve. Pick second tangent curve. And it wants to find a third curve, so you have to be careful not to touch any other curves. Pull that out till I get something I like. Choose which segment I want to keep. Use a fillet curve to clean this up. Okay, that's fine. Gotta join that together. Now I'm going to, before I connect these two together, because I'm going to want to rebuild and smooth that out a little, I'm going to go ahead and offset this curve so I can get this segment of wire or pipe the way that I want it. It's a little narrower here, and then it becomes fuller again. I'm going to put that in by rebuilding. The 18.4 that was fine for the outer curve should be fine for this one too. First I'm going to turn on my points. Oh, I just dragged. Told you I never do that. And once I've got what I want, only then will I bother coming back in and curvature graphing it. I have figured out how to pause the recording. Hopefully that worked. Alright, so I'm going to turn on the curvature graph. And the question is, how smooth do I bother taking this? Now this can actually, this little secondary anchor point that I often throw away can be sometimes useful in a tight arc like this. Tight curve. This is the biggest kink right here. I will smooth that out. And that's good enough for me. Okay. Now I will come in and join these two together. Rebuild them. It has 26 points now. I'm going to give it 20. I'm still seeing a... Oh, that's pretty good. Turn on my graph. Turn on my points. That's not enough points to control this, so I'm going to rebuild it again. Undo the rebuild. Rebuild again. I'm going to give it 24. That's better. And that's really good enough. That's fine. Okay. Need to draw this piece here. I'm going to do that with an arc. Doing start end direction. Going to use my object snaps to grab this intersection. Going to come up past where I think it needs to go. And then I'll pull that arc out. And that's done. Now, that is necessarily the best way to draw this, because as you can see, it doesn't match it very well because it's a perfect arc. And this is not. This is a more organic shape. But I wanted to use that tool again to show it to you. I'm going to rebuild that to a 4-9 curve. I'm going to delete the secondary anchor points and grab a hold of it. Curvature graph on. It's pretty smooth. I mean, fussing with this is just that. I'm fussing at this point. It doesn't really need any more work. Fine. So, I have that. I can use fillet. And I can join these two together. And I can add them to my blue layer along with the offset. Okay. Now there's a leaf form back in behind here. Some of it's unclear, but I can sketch enough of it to get by. I'm going to use an interpolate curve. I'm going to start down below where I know it begins. And it becomes part of this form here. I don't want it to use my object snaps. I'm holding down my Alt key, which temporarily disables object snap, and enter to finish. That's fine. And I'm not even going to bother rebuilding that curve. I'm going to take it as is. I'm going to do another interpolate curve. I'm going to start out beyond where this curve begins. Fine. And once again, I'm going to accept that as it is, because it's just a small slice right here. This one I will work more with. I'm not happy with it. Start out beyond the point. Start out beyond the point. And there is this petal form. It's prettier over here. You can see it better over here. This one's actually been eroded a bit by nature, the stone. So I'm going to actually draw this over here. Fill it to clean up the point inside curve. And now I'm going to mirror these over. I'm going to click the copy no option so it doesn't make a copy of itself. 0 for my origin point and bring it over. Okay. You can see how much the other one had been damaged. I'm now going to use this. I'm going to pull it into position. I'm going to move the end of it. I'm going to move the end of it to this intersection. And I'm going to go ahead and trim off this portion here. And actually, I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to leave that for now. But I will eventually be trimming that off. So the curves I need to rebuild and work with are these three. And they're of similar complexity, so I'm going to do the same setting for all of them. I'm going to do, well, actually, a 9-4, make it a 10-4. Should work for all three of those. Turn on their points so I can see what I've got. Get rid of my extra anchors where I don't want them. Actually, that one might prove useful, but this one won't. Okay. Refine these a little bit. Bring them closer to the drawing. A little more elegant. This is probably one of the more unfortunate looking ones, so I'll spend a little extra time with it. And I'll turn on the curvature graph now. Scale that display scale back a bit. Only real rough bit here is this transition. There's some strangeness happening here, which I will fix. Going to move these 2 points together to get more of a regional control on that. And while I think it could be a little nicer, that'll do. Okay. So now, fillet curves. Remember, fillet can extend too and allow things to reach. So that's fine. I'm wondering if by adjusting those curves I lost that. I did. So I'm going to go ahead and move this. When I adjusted these two curves, it lost the connection with this one. So I'm going to come back and position that back in the corner. Although I wanted to move them both together. Last thing I'm going to do, actually first I'm going to join those together. I'm going to trim this away. And then using the same principle, there are two ways I can do this. I can trim all this away and blend it together. But there's a prettier way to handle this, and that is to do arc tangent to curves. Select that curve. Hold down that Alt key so I'm not fighting my intersection. Object snap. And see, as long as I don't grab any other curves, it's a little tricky. Best way to control it is to keep your cursor on that second curve. You run into more problems when you allow Rhino to guess, so get real close to or on that curve. That is the segment I want to keep. Sorry, I must be bumping the Windows key to send up that graphic in the corner. And now I'm going to do fillet. And you see that very gracefully now fills that space. Alright, so I have this element done. I want to fillet this. Ask myself, do I want to keep a point? I do not want to keep a point. This curve is no longer useful. In fact, it's in my way. Circle center radius. Make a small radius. Trim. Delete and do a conic. Remember, whenever we start a conic, just go ahead when you hit the command and hit T enter. Select the first curve. Use your object snap to grab the end of it. For the end of the conic, hit T enter again for tangent. Select your second curve. Snap to the end of it. We'll make this one fairly pointy, but not completely. Join all those together. Throw away all of our reference curves. Join together what we can. I just hit the spacebar to repeat the join command. Okay, that's fine. Now what I'm going to do is draw the bottom portion of this. I can put this on the blue layer. Now I'll go ahead and do so. All right. I'm not going to draw this little thing because I think it's ugly. I don't think it helps the design at all. I'm having questions about this little element as well. So I'll wait on those. But I definitely want to draw this. I don't care for this round, kind of flat roundness. I'd like a little more of a smooth arc. So I'll create that when I draw it. Go ahead and make my box. Holding down my Alt key to deactivate my object snaps. Fillet curves to tidy up the box. As I said, if you came into my studio right now, you would know exactly where I'm working by looking for that box. I'm going to offset this curve to catch the end of the scroll. And the same thing to catch the end of the scroll. fillet those off as well. Looking for things to use. I think I will use the arc tangent to curves. Click first curve. Click second curve to give me the start of that. And I will use my extend curve by arc to point to draw the rest of it. And I don't care for that last piece, so I'm going to actually remove it. And I've changed my mind. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use circle tangent, 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 arc tangent to curves, I should say. Select on the first curve, select on the second curve. Hold Alt key down. And I want that piece. Okay, now I'm going to use a blend curve. Adjustable blend curve. And in this case, I'm going to have to back up that those main pulling points a bit. Okay. And then I'm going to extend by arc to point to get me the rest of this. And to draw this portion. Enter when done. Okay, so I have my initial poly curve here, which I'm going to join together. Going to rebuild it. Anything with a tight coil on the end is going to need to be over 20. I'm going to make it 23. Turn on my points. Remove my secondary anchor on that end. I'm going to need it down here, so I'll keep it. Going to turn on the curvature graph. Take a look at what I'm worried about the ball at the end right now. I don't have enough control points in there to address it anyway. Remember that by selecting a couple of points at a time, it allows me to move a whole segment fairly smoothly. Now I mentioned that I didn't care for how flat that was through there. So I'm going to move it out and then use my curvature graph to guide me into a smooth resolution of it. I'm more worried about the smoothness than I am about it lining up with my initial guideline, because once I have the smoothness, I can grab 2 or 3 points and move a whole segment pretty smoothly if I want to go back and grab that full thickness, full width. Okay, So now I have to address this, and I don't have enough control points in here to address this. I can try. I'm not going to be staying very close to their scroll because their scroll wasn't attractive. It was flattened and kind of vertical and unhappy looking. And actually, I may have enough points in here to do what I want. We'll see. See how much more regular that's getting? Pushing and pulling. Tweaking it a little bit at a time. It's okay that I brought that down because, like I had noticed before, it was a little too vertical anyway. And that secondary anchor point is going to come in handy. Fine. Curve's done. Okay. Now I'm going to do an offset of it. See if I still have offset on my pull down menu. I don't. Through point. Okay, that's fine. Now you can see that a lot of that isn't really useful in keeping with the drawing. So what I'm going to do is do a circle, center radius, near object snap. I'm going to grab somewhere in here where it is working really well for me. I'm going to pull it out to where it doesn't. Starts to fall away here, starts to fall away there. I'm going to use that as a trim tool. Delete that circle and do my extend by arc to point. Going to pull out well beyond. Enter to finish. Going to rebuild that curve. That's a simple kind of portion of a circle. I'm going to call it 15 points. Throw away the awkward double anchor. Take a look. Turn on my curvature graph. Increase my scale a bit. This isn't bad at all. It turned out pretty nicely. Now, see how it's all bulgy down here? That's all going to be trimmed away. I don't care. So that's fine. Throw away my reference boxes. Going to do a couple of fillet curves. Tidy up that inside corner. Tidy up that outside corner. Obviously, I don't want this sharp point, so do my circle from the end. Pull it back to about where I want to clip it and create that rounded surface. Rounded curve. Trim. Delete. Conic. Just start with the T enter every time you do a conic. Click at the end of that curve for a beginning point. T enter. Click your second point. Second curve, select it, then click at its end point. And then pull out to get the conic that you want. Okay? And that's done. We can join those together. No longer have join on the pull down menu, so I can join these together. and do some trimming to finish up the image, the drawing. Oh, selected the wrong thing. Trim. Trim. And then trim. Trim. That's done. I'm going to do a window select around everything I just did. I'm going to hold down the Control key, do another window select to remove from that selection anything I don't want. I can also click to deselect. I'm going to group that. Control G or Edit Group. I'm going to change it to the blue layer. And I'm going to mirror it over. Remember, mirror, point of mirror, 0, 0, and pulse right over. Now there's a problem. It's gone. Why is it gone? Because the last time I mirrored, I picked the no copy option and Rhino remembered. I want it to make a copy, yes. Start of mirror plane, 0, 0, pull straight up. Here we go. Turn off the background bitmap so we can get a better look at what we've got. Hide it. Okay. We have that much done. Now, running out of time to keep tracing, so I'm going to pick carefully what I want to trace next. I like all of these things, but I like this curling element that comes back in. So that's what I'm going to draw next. Create my box. Through point. Out to the farthest parameter. To the bottom. Okay. Going to fillet that up, trim it up with a fillet command. Here and here. Now, I don't have an upper boundary. The upper boundary is basically the halfway line, so I'm going to use it to trim off this surplus. I'm going to do the same thing since the motif comes all the way to the center line. Use that center vertical to trim it off. Okay, a couple of things I'd like to further indicate. Where that little cleft is. And where that point is. Clean it up. With the fillet command. And I'm ready to start drawing. Okay, it's interesting because you see what a complicated organic form this is. That's not bad news in Rhino. That's actually good news. The more organic it is, the less I have to worry about how smooth it is. Okay? I'm going to draw this curve first. with just an interpolate curve. Going to start out beyond where it begins. And it's implied that it could actually follow through, come down into here. Having done that, I can now get rid of that line. I'm going to start drawing this curve. And then there's a third curve. Oops, stop too soon. And then there's a long arc here. And here. Now this is important to get fairly close to that green line because it's going to mirror to the other side. It's a little unclear what happens in here, so I get to decide. I can look at this side over here and see that I believe it does something like that. Okay. So this is now pretty much drawn. I need to draw sketched. Draw that. Draw that. Draw that. Draw this. And that's done. Okay. Kind of messy. It'll work. I'm going to rebuild my longest, most complicated curve, this one here. I'm not going to rebuild it with as many points as it might need initially, because it would be too heavy. It has 17. 15 is not enough. I'm going to put 19 points in this curve. You can see how that cost me a lot of control. That's fine. Remember, it's important to me that it comes over and touches that green guide as much as possible. See that sometimes I'm selecting 1 point, sometimes I'm selecting 2. Depends on what I think needs to happen. Curvature graph on. Just sweetening this up. It's fine. So that one's done. I'll pick an intermediary color for curves that have been worked on. And we'll now rebuild this curve. Maybe I'll rebuild this curve. This looks like the second most complicated. I'll use the same point count I used on the last one. That's too many points. See how dense that is? I don't want it that dense. Where did my rebuild go? There it is. So I'll take it down to 15. That's better. Delete my double anchor. And looking at how that's flowing, there's really nothing very wrong with this. Grab those 2 points and move them out a bit. That's about it. Turn on my curvature graph. See what I have. See if there's anything really toxic going on. This could be prettier. Okay, fine. Bring that over. Changing a layer, which remember once again I do with a keyboard shortcut, but it's available off of Edit, Layers, Change Object Layer. Alright, so those two are down. Alright, I have a lot of strange stuff going on in here that I'm not loving. I don't actually need that curve. I'm going to delete it. Okay. Those two are 4-3 curves, so these two I'll rebuild next. And this one, they're about the same degree of complexity. I'm going to make those 4 7s. I'm going to leave the secondary anchor on this because it's going to allow me to redefine the shape of this a bit, which is what I wanted to do. Fine. I'll delete that secondary anchor. I'll leave that one. I need curvature graph to really see what I need to do now. Take that density scale down. Take a look at a few things. That's fine. That's fine as it is. This is all complicated just because I have control points close together. It's not a problem. Change the layer. Okay. I don't need that. Well, no, I don't need it anymore. In fact, I really don't need any of these anymore. These are 4 3s. 3rd degree, 4 points. And that should make them smooth enough that I don't have to do anything else with them. I'm actually just going to pick this whole curve up and move it a little bit. Okay. The last curve I have to think about is this one. And I'm not going to. I'm going to leave it as it is. Okay. Now, I'm going to clean this up. Actually, I don't think I worked on this curve. Nope, it's still got a 3rd degree, so I know I didn't. I'm going to make that a 9-point curve. That's fine. All right, fill it. Fill it. Fill it. Fill it. Fill it. Okay. Fill it. Fill it. Okay, I'm going to use my... There's several things I could do here. I'm going to use blends. Curve, circle, center radius, and object snap. Trim. Blend. It's fine. That's fine. Okay. Here I am going to use my arc, tangent to curves. Click first curve, click second curve. Staying on that second curve and zooming way in. Spinning around till I get the segment I want, and then fill it. I'm going to go ahead and join those together while I'm there. That inside curve, I think I'll leave it. This inside curve, I think I'll leave it too. At the end here, though, I can't have that sharp point. It's definitely a conic in there. Remember when we do conics, we just start by hitting T, enter, picking that tangent option. Pick the first curve and use object snap end to catch the end of it. Tangent for the second one also. Pick the curve, pull it out, enter. Okay, that's done. Now this is going to be hidden behind here, so it doesn't matter what goes on. But since we're not going to get a chance to draw that, I'm going to make it attractive. I'm going to do it with my arc, tangent to curves. Trim those away. Join those together. Join all of this together and that together. Use it to trim these two portions. Okay, the last thing we have to do, we need to join these together. I need to offset this curve. I'm going to offset it to there to try and pick up some of this feeling. Okay. However, it doesn't really line up, of course. I could adjust this and adjust this, but I'm going to do a non-uniform scale. The origin point, I want to be the one thing I don't want to move. I don't want this to move. Actually, even more than I don't want that to move, I don't want it to move right through here. So I'm going to click there. It's asking me if I want to scale in the X scale, and I do. So I'm just going to reach over here and pick anywhere as my first reference point. And you see, I could do that. But I don't like how that turned out, so I'm going to try another trick. I'm going to try and do the same command. This time I am going to grab right down here. I'm going to pick a 1, which means no real transformation. And I'm going to scale the rest of the curve up. See, doing non-uniform scales gives you a very gradual transition, which can be helpful. Z, keep it 1, just accept it as enter. And that's fine. I'm going to rebuild it just a bit. I'll give it 30 points. Turn on those points. Put on my graph. Just to check it out. The only part of the curve I'm really interested in is this area here, and that's fine. Okay, I'm going to trim. The end off, throw away this little scrap. It's left over, and I'm going to split using the point option for my cutting object, so I can just drag along and click, hit enter when you're through. Throw away that extra bit. Now actually I think I did that too soon. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to come down a little farther. There. Now I'm going to select both of these curves for trimming. Pre-select them. Trim that element out. I'm going to offset these curves. To get kind of this little ridge that you can feel right there. Okay? It isn't very sensitive. It isn't great. I'm going to rebuild it, but I'm going to keep the point count really high. Maybe 50. And then I'm just going to turn on the points. Come in. 50 is too high. Keep it at about 38. Yeah, that's better. Come in and improve it just a little. This is supposed to be an organic thing, so I'm not really worried about removing my secondary control point, anchor points. I'm not really curious about my curvature graph at this point. The kind of wabi-sabi nature of it is actually closer to the reference material. I am, however, going to split this in a couple of places. Point option. I'm going to split it about here. I'm going to split it about there. Throw those two. That's enough. That's enough. Click, using the shift key, and group them all together. Change them to the blue layer. Oh, I have a problem. Ungroup. Control Shift G. Control Shift G. This curve ends up out in the middle of nowhere. We can't have that. I'm not really concerned about the curvature graph or anything like that to tuck under there. And while I'm there, I'll trim off both of those. That's better. Use my crossing selection from lower right to upper left. Anything it touches it'll select. The only thing I don't want is that green line, so I'll hold down Control and click it to remove it from the selection. Group all those curves together. Mirror. Hi class, this is Professor Kim Nelson with the Jewelry Design Department at the Fashion Institute of Technology, continuing our tutorial series on drawing 2D curve work in Rhino. Continuing on with our tracing where I left off yesterday. I'm going to draw this branched, actually I'm going to draw the first half of this branched piece right here. Start by creating my box. Through point. I want just the arc, the curved part for now. These are all offset through point curves, like so. Use my fillet curve command to trim that up. Make sure radius is set to 0, which it is. Click on what you want to keep. Okay, so I put it up. The only other real important couple of curves here would be pick my offset curve for my drop-down menu. Would be the bottom of this element here. Hi, how you doing? And another reference curve here. Clean that up. And that really gives me all the information I need to start drawing this. The first thing I want to be able to capture is this curving arc right here. And the way I'm going to do that, with an arc command, tangent to curves. So curve menu, arc, tangent to curves. Asks for a first tangent curve. That means touching, coming off of. I'm going to pick that one. I'm going to pick my second tangent curve, which is this one. And now I can rubber band this. And it will remain tangent to those two curves, unless I leave completely. But if as long as it can mathematically stay tangent, it will. And now it gives me a choice. Do I want it to draw the curve on that side? And you'll see as I spin this around, it gives me different curve segments I can keep. I want that one. Okay. I'm going to do an extend by arc to point command. Click on the end. I'm going to draw that up into there. I'm going to repeat that command for this end of the curve. Drag it as far as it's valid. Drag again. And drag again. I want to drag beyond the box. Remember, we always want things to overlap. When you're done, hit enter. Okay. And now I need to create this little reverse curve that I have here. And I'm going to do that with just an interpolate curve. Freeform, interpolate. I'll start somewhere beyond the box here. And I'm just going to let it overlap. That's fine. I'm going to rebuild this. Fourth degree, and I'm going to say that's going to be about an 18-point curve. It's already pretty smooth. I'm pretty close to what I want, so I'm just going to check the analysis on it. Pretty nice. Turn on the control points. I can smooth it out a little bit right here. Remember, I can select more than one point at a time. So if I wanted to, I could grab both of these and move them together. And that's fine. I'm going to move this over a little bit. All of these. Just so I come closer to my initial impression of where that motif ended. Yeah, bring these back over. Fine. Okay, now I have the issue of what's going on here. And the way I'm going to handle that is with another arc tangent to curves. Pick first tangent curve. Pick second tangent curve. And it wants to find a third curve, so you have to be careful not to touch any other curves. Pull that out till I get something I like. Choose which segment I want to keep. Use a fillet curve to clean this up. Okay, that's fine. Gotta join that together. Now I'm going to, before I connect these two together, because I'm going to want to rebuild and smooth that out a little, I'm going to go ahead and offset this curve so I can get this segment of wire or pipe the way that I want it. It's a little narrower here, and then it becomes fuller again. I'm going to put that in by rebuilding. The 18.4 that was fine for the outer curve should be fine for this one too. First I'm going to turn on my points. Oh, I just dragged. Told you I never do that. And once I've got what I want, only then will I bother coming back in and curvature graphing it. I have figured out how to pause the recording. Hopefully that worked. Alright, so I'm going to turn on the curvature graph. And the question is, how smooth do I bother taking this? Now this can actually, this little secondary anchor point that I often throw away can be sometimes useful. in a tight arc like this. Tight curve. This is the biggest kink right here. I will smooth that out. And that's good enough for me. Okay. Now I will come in and join these two together. Rebuild them. It has 26 points now. I'm going to give it 20. I'm still seeing a... that's pretty good. Turn on my graph. Turn on my points. That's not enough points to control this, so I'm going to rebuild it again. Undo the rebuild. Rebuild again. I'm going to give it 24. That's better. And that's really good enough. That's fine. Okay. Need to draw this piece here.